Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're digging into something huge, Bitcoin.
It's a topic that keeps evolving, isn't it?
Absolutely. So picture this, a currency with no government control, no central bank printing it, but millions using it globally.
Quite the concept.
Yeah. So our mission today is to trace how this mysterious idea really kicked off a financial revolution, one that's, well, still making waves.
It's a fascinating story.
It really is. And you'll find out why Bitcoin's way more than just digital money. But first, we need to understand the dream behind it all, right? This idea of digital cash that works online, totally bank-free.
Right, and that dream, it's actually been around for a while. People were trying this for years. Brilliant computer scientists, really.
Oh, cool.
Well, you had things like eCash from David Chaum back in the 90s and Nick Szabo's BitGold in the early 2000s.
Okay, I've heard of those, but they didn't quite make it, did they?
No, they didn't. And the fundamental issue, the flaw, was always that central point of control. They relied on some central authority.
Which makes them vulnerable.
Exactly. Vulnerable to shutdowns, fraud, government intervention. It kind of defeated the whole point of truly independent digital cash.
I see. So the stage was set.
Yeah.
The world needed something different, something decentralized.
Precisely. We were waiting for that breakthrough.
And then, almost like a bolt from the blue, it arrived right in the middle of the 2008 global financial crisis, which is pretty significant timing.
Incredible timing, yeah.
This person, or maybe group, nobody really knows, called Satoshi Nakamoto appears. And in October 2008, they released this white paper.
Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Quite the title.
Right. Not just a casual post. It was this formal proposal. And the promise, money sent directly, person to person. No banks, no governments, no middlemen at all.
A radical vision.
Totally radical. But here's where it gets really interesting. How on earth was that even possible without a central server or company running things?
Well, that's the magic ingredient, isn't it? It all comes down to the core technology. Blockchain.
Okay, blockchain. We hear that term a lot. Break it down simply for us.
Think of it like a giant shared digital notebook or a ledger. Anyone can read it, but absolutely no one can erase or change what's written in it once it's there.
Okay, a public, unchangeable notebook.
Exactly. Every single Bitcoin transaction gets recorded in this ledger, block by block. And once a block is added, it's cryptographically sealed. It can't be altered.
And this solved that big problem you mentioned earlier.
Yes, the infamous double spending problem, making sure you couldn't just copy digital money like you copy a file. Blockchain ensures scarcity and authenticity without needing a bank to verify everything.
That's clever. So it's trust built into the code, essentially.
You got it. Trust through transparency and mathematics, not through institutions. That shift is maybe the most profound part.
So Satoshi didn't just theorize, they actually built it. January 2009, the Bitcoin network goes live.
That's right. Satoshi mined the very first block, the Genesis block it's called.
And mining back then. It wasn't like these huge operations we see today, right?
Oh, not at all. Mining was basically using your computer's processing power to solve these complex crypto puzzles.
And solving the puzzle meant.
It meant you got to add the next block of transactions to the chain, and as a reward, you received newly created Bitcoins. That's how new coins entered the system and how the network stayed secure.
Okay. And wasn't there something special inside that first Genesis block? A message.
Yes, a hidden message embedded right there. It was a headline from the London Times newspaper. The Times, 03 Jan 2009, Chancellor, on brink of second bailout for banks.
Wow. So not just a technical timestamp.
Definitely not. It was a commentary, a statement about the failures of the traditional banking system right as Bitcoin was offering this alternative, this independence, like carving a manifesto into the cornerstone.
It's quite a debut. And initially, like you said, it was just tech enthusiasts, cryptographers playing around with it, mining on their home PCs.
Pretty much. It had no real-world value at first. It was an experiment, a curiosity.
Until the pizza. You have to tell the pizza story.
Yes. The legendary pizza incident. May 2010. A programmer in Florida, Laszlo Hanyecz, he wanted to prove Bitcoin could be used for something real.
So what did he do?
He offered 10,000 Bitcoins to anyone who would order and deliver 2 pizzas to him. And someone did.
10,000 Bitcoins. What were they worth then? Like practically nothing.
About $40 maybe for the 2 pizzas.
$40 then? And today?
Oh my goodness.
Today, those 10,000 Bitcoins would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars, easily the most expensive pizza order in history.
Unbelievable. That really puts the value change into perspective.
It certainly does. And it wasn't long after that, 2011 actually, that Bitcoin hit parity with the US dollar. One Bitcoin equaled $1.
A major milestone.
A huge milestone. And interest just exploded from there. People started seeing it wasn't just, internet play money. It was a new way to store value, transfer value.
And that idea of digital scarcity probably helped too, the fixed supply. Absolutely. The fact that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins is key. It gave it that digital gold narrative, something inherently valuable, resistant to inflation, because no one can just decide to print more.
Okay, so it's gaining traction, hitting parity. People are seeing it as digital gold. But let's unpack this. It wasn't all smooth sailing, was it?
Oh, far from it. The road was incredibly bumpy, very rocky, actually.
What were some of the big hurdles? I remember hearing about Silk Road.
Right. That was early on. Because Bitcoin allowed for pseudonymous transactions, it was adopted on Silk Road, which was an online marketplace primarily for illegal goods.
Not great for Bitcoin's image.
Not at all. When the FBI shut Silk Road down in 2013, the headline screamed, "Bitcoin used for crime." It created a really negative association.
But then came something even bigger, right? Mt. Gox.
Mt. Gox.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a massive setback. In 2014, Mt. Gox was the world's largest Bitcoin exchange by far.
And it got hacked.
Catastrophically hacked.
Yeah.
They announced they had lost around 850,000 Bitcoins, which even then was an enormous amount of money.
850,000 Bitcoin vanished. Just like that.
Just like that. It completely shattered investor confidence. The price crashed hard. And honestly, a lot of people thought, okay, this is the end. Bitcoin's finished.
You heard that a lot back then. Bitcoin is dead.
Over and over again. But what's truly fascinating, and maybe the core insight here, is Bitcoin's resilience.
How so?
Every time something like Mt. Gox happened, every time people declared it dead, it seemed to, well, it came back, and often stronger.
So it's kind of anti-fragile. It gets stronger from shocks.
That's a perfect way to put it. Anti-fragile. Each crisis, each attack, it exposed weaknesses, sure, but it forced the ecosystem, the developers, the community to adapt, to improve, to build better infrastructure. Trust decentralized even further.
So after the Mt. Gox crash, what happened? Did it just slowly climb back?
Slowly but surely, yeah. From around 2015 onwards, you started seeing more serious players get involved, more businesses accepting it, more developers building applications, more investors dipping their toes in.
And mainstream finance started noticing too.
They did. Major financial institutions started exploring blockchain, even if they were skeptical about Bitcoin itself initially. Then came 2017.
2017. The year everyone suddenly knew about Bitcoin.
Exactly. It broke $1,000 again early in the year, which was big news. But then it just went parabolic. It climbed and climbed, hit nearly $20,000 by December.
$20,000. That brought in a frenzy, right?
Massive mainstream attention. Suddenly, your neighbor, your grandma, everyone's talking about Bitcoin. Wall Street took notice. Small-town investors jumped in. It was everywhere.
Wow, what a write-up. But of course, crypto being crypto.
What goes up that fast often comes down. And it did. The bubble burst.
So after hitting nearly 20K in late 2017, what happened in 2018?
A brutal crash. Bitcoin lost over 80% of its value. It bottomed out somewhere around $3,000 in late 2018.
80%. Ouch. And the Bitcoin is dead? Headlines came back.
Oh, with a vengeance. Critics felt vindicated. See, we told you it was just a bubble, a Ponzi scheme.
But the pattern held, right? It didn't actually die.
It didn't die. It survived. It stabilized. And I think that period, that crash and survival, was actually really important.
Why is that?
Huge concerns. And in that context, Bitcoin, with its fixed supply, its digital gold narrative, started looking really attractive to a different type of investor.
As a hedge against inflation and traditional financial instability.
Precisely. You started seeing major corporations, serious institutional players making moves, companies like MicroStrategy, Tesla, Square, putting billions of dollars of their corporate treasury into Bitcoin.
That's a massive vote of confidence, not just individuals anymore.
A game changer. And you also had payment platforms like PayPal integrating crypto, making it much easier for regular people to buy, hold, and even spend Bitcoin.
So easier access, institutional buy-in.
It all culminated in Bitcoin reaching a new all-time high and becoming, for the first time, a $1 trillion asset class in 2021.
$1 trillion.
Yeah.
From a white paper in 2008 and pizzas in 2010 to $1 trillion asset. That's quite the journey.
It really is.
If you had to sum up that journey, that history,
Bitcoin.
So it continues to shape the future.
It absolutely does, which leaves us and you, our listener, with a big question, doesn't it?
Always good to end with a question. What is it?
Well, what do you think? Is Bitcoin going to keep fundamentally reshaping finance? Is its biggest impact still ahead? Could it one day replace traditional money, or is it maybe just the beginning of something even bigger, a whole new financial ecosystem?
Lots to think about there. A story definitely still being written,